Hello, Sharon. I just got a thumbs up from technology, so we're ready whenever you are. Whoops, just a minute. I'm getting a report it's not live yet from someone else. All right, Sharon, we're all set. I've got another report. We're all set. Thanks.
All right, then, welcome to our meeting this evening, and I would like to call the meeting to order. And with that, we will proceed with our budget work session.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go over the presentation. Last time I did a presentation was in February. A bunch of the slides you see will not have changed, but there's been a lot of news in the area of state aid and federal funding, so we'll touch on that as well. Of course, the Iroquois vision become premier educational institution in New York State by addressing the personalized education requirements of each and every student. Our mission has not changed, and our considerations for the budget process. Continuing to be committed to our students, exercise good care and judgment in managing resources, do business in an open, objective, professional manner, and be future focused. More current issues that are going on that we think about when we're talking about the budget. There were the threats of state aid reductions, and we don't know in the future if there still could be state aid reductions, depending on how the economy goes. We watch the consumer price index. We look for New York State mandates and things that change with educational programs and requirements that we have. And of course, the whole method of how the state distributes state aid to districts across New York State. Back in February, we talked about these being the next steps that we had to do, and all these have been completed. We finalized the tax cap calculation, reviewed reserves, looked at enrollment changes and retirements of staff. We monitored the state aid, obviously, and looked at our BOCE's projected services for next year. And we talked about in February about the insurance for one-to-one devices, and we've removed that revenue from the 21-22 budget because we're not going to have that technology insurance requirement going forward. And
John, if we were back at that last slide, those are all things you did to reduce expenditures this year, correct?
To review and hopefully reduce in many cases, yes.
Because I know you're going to point out somewhere else in one area that actually had to go up a little bit since your last presentation.
You know, John, the technology insurance requirement, just what exactly did that cover?
That was a student technology fee that we would charge to students if they were taking home computers. It was optional to take home computers, so if they wanted to do that, they would pay a small fee for insurance purposes. But because of COVID and everything that happened with that and homeschooling and things like that, computers being taken home are kind of mandatory now. It's not an option anymore. And some families just don't have the money to spend on the technology insurance, so we're going to remove that going forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
So the agenda tonight is look at the reserve plan, look at our revenues, including tax cap calculation, look at our expenses, and review the voter propositions for May. Reserve plan, this is something we try to show 2 or 3 times a year. This is the reserves that the district has, the current balances that are in place on the left side, what we estimate being used this year in blue, and then kind of coming up with an estimate of what we may use these funds for in the future and just give us a feel or some kind of estimated plan to use these reserves in the future, if we choose to use them at all. And this one, the main point is the capital reserve. We have 2 capital reserves. The one is going to be taken down to 0 this year to support the voter-approved capital project that was approved in October. That was planned by voter approval. And then we have a new capital reserve that was established in 2019, and we plan to fund that one hopefully around $1.2 million this year and continue to fund that as we have done for many, many years to make sure we're ready for the next big project in our district. And there are 2 repair reserves that are held to be used only in cases of an immediate need that something has to be repaired. We would ask the board to approve access of these reserves, and we would get repairs done if needed. So nothing in the blue that's planned to be used next year at this time. On the second page, we see some reserves that we have always planned to use in a consistent manner. So in blue in the middle, you see 4 different reserves that will be accessed to support the 21-22 budget. And those are the exact same numbers that were used to support the budget this year that we're in right now. So no real changes on reserve use except for the technology reserve, which is actually on the previous page. The bottom one is the technology reserve, and we did utilize that one and completely use that one this year through voter approval. And we do have a couple, like on the bottom, this one we have TRS reserve, which is a newer reserve for the teacher retirement system. And we do plan to fund that going forward to make sure we can hedge against any kind of changes in the employer contribution rate.
It looks like you said they're all the same as this year. It looks like we're going to use a little more of the employee benefit for the retirees, I imagine.
That is the number that's the same from what we use this year. The
Okay.
248,000 is the same number.
Okay, thank you.
Other revenues, the big news was federal funding. There were 2 different actions for federal funding to schools. One was called the American Rescue Plan, and the other was the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, or they call this one ESSER 2, 2 being named because there was already one form of ESSER this year that we've accessed, and we've begun accessing right now. We haven't received all of it yet. But these are some caveats on these. These do have specific purposes in mind. We're still kind of going through there were hundreds of pages attached to these proposals, so we're trying to get a lot of information on what we can use this money for. We know it's going to be used to address specific learning loss due to the pandemic. That's one of the main intentions of this money. So we know that this is going to require additional services and programs of the school, and this money is really meant to supplement and pay for some of those programs that we will have to add in the future. The important thing as well, these funds can be accessed up to September of 2024. That's the American Rescue Plan is September 24. ESSER is of September of 23. So if it's September 24, that's really the 24-25 school year. So there's 4 school years that we could, we plan to spread this money across to make sure we implement programs that we can sustain and not have things impact the tax base and things like that, the tax levy. So we don't have to increase the tax levy to pay for those things. We plan to, stretch this money over the coming 4 years.
And I think I saw somewhere earlier this month that New York, even though these are federal funds, New York State still has guidance coming out, and they're not planning on releasing that till the end of April. So if there are some things that seems like we're still saying could be one way or the other, it's because the guidance is still coming. I just heard some stuff today about it too, about how much funding you could use in the first year and so on.
John, is the state reducing our aid by the dollar amount that
The
we're
original-
receiving from the federal?
The original proposal by the governor in January did have a take back of state aid money and replace it with federal money. That was corrected in the new budget that was approved in April, early April. So it's a truly additional money. It's not replacing state aid.
Great, that's refreshing.
Yes, that was a
Something
change we all
different.
hoped for.
And what I worry about, Chuck, is I think that's something we have to keep our eye on, because I know the federal government did a great job of putting restriction on it so it couldn't happen. But if we're having to spread this over multiple years, could something happen in future years? And so we'll just keep an eye on it, and we'll have to be, advocates for it with our legislative people, individuals.
And we anticipate this will go very similar to the ESSER funds that we were allocated this year, where it's going to be extensive grant type process where you're going to have to apply for it, fill out lots of paperwork, and really put together a plan of how you're going to use this money before they actually approve it and let you access it. Tax cap is unchanged from the February meeting. This is a calculation that's based primarily on CPI, which is 1.23%, for this purpose at least. And then they look at growth factors for the area and prior levy amounts, and from that, this calculation is created, and at the bottom, it's allowable increase of 1.96%, or $608,000. And that would require only a simple majority, 50% vote from the public. So no changes there. This is where that 1.96 lines up against previous years. It's really one of the lower ones. Back in 2016-17, there was a less than 1%, but that was really driven by a very low CPI for that year. And this is just an estimate and to kind of to show how this levy would impact the 6 different townships. So it's kind of equalized based on the equalization rates and showing what the impact is. And right now it's the next estimate of very similar to the levy increase, 1.96% increase on the average tax bill.
Let's just take a real pause real quick because we're going to let someone else into the meeting, if we could. And I think really in looking at that slide, I always want to talk about with the tax levy while we're waiting a second, is that how for tax rates, the rate per thousand will change, but we have to be very aware of the values of the individual's household anytime you do anything with taxes. Are we all set, guys? All right, John, let's continue.
And this obviously is just an estimate. This will not be exactly what we see next year. It never is. And to review what we've seen over the past number of years, when you look at the year we're in now, you can see our equalized tax rate has dropped quite a bit. And the reason for that is we've seen really property values have gone up substantially. Real property values of transaction sales, but also equalization rates have made the value of property go up as well. So tax bills are not necessarily going down, but the tax rate overall is because there's more property value to spread the tax levy against. So that's what this slide is showing, that even though the budget, the tax levy went up 2.08% last year, the actual tax rate, adjusted tax rate, went down by 9% for the properties in our district. And of course, we always say individual tax bills and things, your individual bill will vary based on your own assessed value, equalization rates, and things like that. State aid was also one of the things we were waiting for, and it went beyond April 1st, and we got the news last week about what the aid is going to be for districts. We are going to see a good increase in our foundation aid, which is the main component of our aid, 2.3%, which is probably the largest foundation aid increase we've seen in probably 10 years, I would guess.
It's the largest one that I can remember.
So that was great news to hear, and that's something that stays with us and keeps building then. So getting some short-term, one-time funding is great from federal, but foundation aid is going to stay with us and hopefully increase over time.
Jen, even with the 2.3% increase that we're seeing, if I recall correctly, I think Iroquois received the second lowest percentage increase of aid. Is that just a function of the formula, or is that a function of our legislators on how they make adjustments prior to doling out the dollars?
I think it's a combination of our wealth, enrollment, but mainly how the legislators use the formulas for pushing out the funds. And I would, I'm worried a little bit about next year because I know that they've written into legislation a 2% increase each year, but to get people up to a certain amount, and if they feel we're already at that amount based on our socioeconomic status, we might not be seeing this again for a few years, so they can take care of what they committed to. So again, we'll have to keep that eye on future years, and that's why what John was talking earlier about the spreading of the federal dollars over multiple years. We're really looking to do that this year to, be forward thinking, so there's no big cliffs, is typically what the wording is, where, there's huge changing in expenditures, but you can't cover it with revenue. So we're preventing that by looking at this long range with his forecast.
I'm green. No, I'm green. This is good news, though, because last month we were looking at a negative
Yeah,
in
correct.
8, right?
Yeah. Overall,
It's been a
our
huge-
overall aid was going to be negative, yes.
Yes, and now it is not.
That's a, yes, significant change, yes.
Awesome.
And it is not really fair to look at the list of schools and compare the bottom line increase because there are lots of other things that go into the aid calculation, like expense-based aids and things like that. So there are one-time things that happen in some districts that generate more aid one year than the other. But foundation aid is one you can compare directly. So I think our 2.3 is probably in a lower level than other districts that will get a higher level based on their combined wealth ratio and different things like that.
You know, I was trying to look at school districts similar to ours, like Newport, Star Point, and they were all substantially higher.
They were higher to begin
A
with.
higher percentage increase.
Yeah.
But we also did see some increases in some of our expense-based aid categories. And we do know kind of what we spent last year and what aid that'll generate this year, even better than the state knows, because we really know our expenses better than they do. And we are also, the news that came up was we were allocated $205,000 for universal pre-K, and that kind of caught us by surprise. We're still investigating what that means. We thought it was a misprint even at first. We weren't even sure, but we've not received universal pre-K money before. We've asked for it for many, many years. We've tried to get in it, but they've said if you didn't get in it many, many years ago, you can't get in it now. They were not allowing anybody else into a universal pre-K program. But now we are allocated some money, and we're going to look into what that means to us and if we can indeed start a program here. They also removed, the governor had proposed in January to consolidate a lot of the expense-based aids into one lump sum. He went back on that, and the newest runs do have it all broken out, so you can see the changes in the different categories. So that was good news for us, too, to make sure we can see things clearly. And he also removed, Chuck, you brought up the pandemic adjustment that he put in January, where he was subtracting out money and replacing it with federal money, pulling out state aid money, replacing it with federal money. He now is left things intact and is showing federal money separately at the bottom of the aid run as truly additional money. So we look at our revenue sheet. Really, the big change here is the top line, which is the federal money, state and federal money combined. Most of that is state aid increase, but there will be some federal assistance there to help our budget.
Now, I'm going to just ask you a question here, too. Our tax levy percent increase, has that changed since earlier?
No, our tax levy calculation has not changed since February.
And I do know a board member did ask me this question. How does that compare with our, what we've gone out as a percentage of levy in past years?
I did have that up.
Oh, that's perfect.
We
Thank
passed
you.
through it already, yeah. So
Okay, yes.
that is available, yes. You want me to show you real fast or no?
No, I just wanted
Okay.
that repeated because when people see this,
Yeah, there is a comparison there.
that they know that is less than our 5-year average,
Yes,
which is good news during these times.
absolutely. So really, like I said, the only thing changing on the revenue side is really that state aid side, which helped solve that gap that we had in February. So that was really what we were waiting to hear.
John, just a question on the sales tax number. Is that fairly firm, or do you think we're going to see a decrease in that because of the impact from COVID?
No, we don't. We went through last year, which was, that last year was a significant impact. We see the numbers pretty much in line this year with what we expected, so we don't see a change happening now. So with this year not being very far off, we don't anticipate next year being very far off either. And we are conservative with that number, so we typically will be above that. But we don't really have a good enough need to increase it this year. We didn't have that much faith, I guess. On the expense side, impacting the budget, some things that have come up. There was some additional information from state ed as far as mandated compensatory services for special education. That's tied to COVID, and meaning that some services were not provided in full due to COVID, so they are extending some of those services to students. So where we thought some services were going to drop off and end at the end of this year, some of those will continue. So we didn't incur more costs. We just didn't have costs drop off the way we thought. I guess I could put it that way. And then impacting the budget, we are going to have to consider programs to address loss of learning services due to COVID. And that federal money is going to have requirements that we spend a certain amount, at least 20% of that funding dedicated to learning loss and programs to address it. Included in the budget is another $100,000 project. We've done this for many, many years now to address small situations in buildings. The one for next year will be completed in the summer of 2022, and it will involve updating, refurbishing the intermediate school cafeteria. So in there, we want to address the firewall separation from the cafeteria to the kitchen, like we are doing for the primary buildings in the capital project. We're going to kind of match that and make sure this one's up to speed with the other schools in our district. And if we have money left over from that, we're going to look at that stage that's in that cafeteria and maybe remove that stage to have more seating area, because it's really not used for anything currently. Retirement expenses, nothing changed here from February. A lower than expected increase in TRS, Teacher Retirement System contributions, which indicates that the stock market has actually been performing fairly well. It hasn't really lost a lot. So usually when the stock market drops, these rates go up because we have to make up the difference that the stock market's not delivering. So TRS only going up 2.8% is really helpful. And the ERS, Employee Retirement System, average increase is around 11%. So that's kind of been typical with past years.
You know, John, just another quick question. I know a number of years ago, the drop in the stock market just killed all of the school districts in Western New York as far as the increased requirement for the TRS and ERS. And I know, you know, we're just beginning the TRS reserve, and we're starting with $50,000, I believe, going in there. Is there any chance that might be increased to stave off that kind of impact should it occur? I mean, hopefully we'll be coming out of COVID, but given the different variants that are out there and, you know, the uncertainty that we still have, you know, I'd hate to see us get hammered again.
I would say that that's probably priority number on our reserve list of funds. Capital reserve is always a priority to make sure we're putting money in that every year. Number two is probably the TRS reserve, because it is, you know, 50,000 is not much to protect against what you're talking about. Maybe 8 to 10 years ago, there were some 25% increases in that, really large scale increases that were really brutal for districts to handle. So we do plan, that's priority two, is to put money, and in my reserve plan, you can see that there's $50,000 a year minimum, but we're going to try and put more in there if possible, yes.
Great, good, thank you.
Health insurance, third year of our our self-insured plan. We did bid out the pharmacy to kind of make sure we're getting good prices on that part of it. And the estimated budget increase for next year, we're going to do 6% roughly on that line item, which is, you know, we still feel is in line with, you know, the outside, and probably better than some of the other plans that deal with school districts at least. So the expense side of it is in front of you here. Again, not really changing much from February. The benefits seeing the biggest part, but that's, you know, driven by the health insurance and the contribution rates.
And I know at different meetings that there are some members of the public that ask for this broken out a little more. Will we see it broken out a little more?
Yes, and so on the following slides, each of these categories we'll look at a little closer. So general support, these are different categories that consist of general support. So you have central administration, finance, staff support, and even though these bars look big, you can see that the dollar amounts are not really huge. Staff support is the reason that one's going up this year is we're going to put a little more money in our legal fund. We do see that go up every year a little bit, so I don't think we've added money in there for a number of years, so we're going to put a little more in there for next year, because those expenses do go up year after year. And then in special items, you see it actually goes down, and special items includes like insurance, and actually it's BOCE's capital expense, and our BOCES capital expense is going to drop for next year, so that category actually goes down.
So I heard you right, that the largest increase that staff support really has to do with changes in what we have to pay for retainer for their legal fees.
Contracted legal expenses, yes.
Contracted legal, thanks.
You know, John, speaking of the BOCES capital projects, any word on whether or not we'll be having an adjustment for our tax cap calculation?
There is in our calculation, there is an adjustment for that, yes.
There is one in there now?
Yes, it's in the calculation now.
Okay.
We get that number updated from them every year, and they provide it to us.
Yeah, I know, because in the past, you know, we would get hit with that, but it wasn't an adjustment.
It's more recent, right? I think last year was the first year it became, yep,
Okay.
you're right.
Yeah, I think the school.
I should have remembered that.
That's okay.
No, it's okay. I think School Board Association was one of the groups that helped push that through. So, and I know everyone in this room does go to those meetings and helps out with that. So thank you to everyone here. And at home, too. I shouldn't exclude you, sorry.
And they call it an exclusion on the tax cap calculation because it's one of those things that you really don't have a lot of control over. Just like if those contribution rates go up by a certain percentage, that they exclude some of that money from the tax cap calculation, and you're essentially allowed to increase the levy a little bit to make up for that. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you know what that's capped at? The percentage for the retirement?
It's
The adjustment.
growth above 2 percentage points, which is a lot of increase. Because if you go from 8% contribution to 9% contribution, that's not. If it goes from 8 to 12, to the 2% of growth is considered. In reality, 8 to 12 is probably a 40% growth,
Right.
but you only get a little of that to call exclusion money and hold that back from the calculation. Instructional budget increases. Again, here you see the biggest bar is special education. So we do, as I spoke before, there are some, we have to extend some services now due to COVID that we didn't plan on doing. So that's going to drive some costs in that area. OCED, you can see, goes down. We're just seeing the enrollment numbers projected for next year are a little bit lower, so we're going to pull a little money from that. And instructional media, you can see, is lower. That's primarily because of some retirements in that department. Transportation is just one bar because everything's lumped into one expense, but a pretty modest 2.2% increase. We're not seeing very much change in fuel, gas, diesel. Gasoline's going up more, but diesel's been very stable, so we don't see a lot of change next year for that.
And not just for transportation, people might not remember from year to year, but I think our transportation supervisor, who you work with, has done a great job over years of really keeping transportation with low percentages consistently year after year.
Absolutely. Eric Nagel's done a great job.
I know one of the things Eric was doing was, taking a look at replacing the diesel buses with gasoline, because we normally don't keep the buses, I think we're 12 years now.
12 years, yeah.
How is that working out, or are we, did we find that the cost for the gasoline?
I'm watching John, he's like ready to talk.
So when we looked at that, when we did that analysis 3 years ago, gasoline was a better choice then because there was over $1 difference at the pump, between diesel. Diesel was $1 more than, I think, premium gasoline, $1 more per gallon at that time. So there was a lot of factors that at that time pointed clearly to gasoline was a better way to go. So we did buy 3 years ago, I think, four gasoline buses. So we've used those, and what they're seeing, the drivers really don't see they're very, performance-wise, they're not very good for the drivers. They don't like them as much. And not that the bus needs to go really fast, but when a bus is fully loaded, a gasoline bus, the diesel engine has a lot more torque, and it can accelerate a little bit and get away from the curb a little bit. And the gasolines just are very difficult to manage, they say. So we're going to go back to diesel in this year's budget with the voter authorization that we're looking for.
But Eric does keep moving around. So I was talking with him about a month ago, and he's going to start looking at electronic buses or electrical buses.
Yep, that's coming.
Because that's coming, so he's going to start looking at those avenues. How many hours do they run? How many miles can they get? because we don't think we'd be able to use those for long trips, but we should be able to use those possibly for around town, just regular bus pickups. We have to look at the charging cycle, and so
Would those be fully electric or hybrid?
I think the ones he's been talking about are fully electric. And so part of the issue is just looking at the recharge cycle of how long it would take, and then also looking at the infrastructure of what we'd have to do to run wires to where the buses would be charged.
And the cost differential of the electric buses versus the savings in
Right now,
fuel costs,
that's what he's been looking into. And right now, electrical buses are more costly,
right?
but there are some grants and aids that are available in it. So it's really trying to balance everything, and we're not at that point yet, even to buy one to try it. But I just wanted the board to know that he is, you know, we looked at the gas. He's not saying, well, that's it, I'm done. He's going on to the next step.
Great, good.
Continually looking.
And also on that,
I have a question too.
go ahead.
I was wondering with the electrical buses, if they could also check into if temperature would be a factor for starting them, since we do get pretty cold winters, with the charging, if it's going to start, if it's like 0 degrees outside. I'm sure they've checked into it, but just in case, it might be a factor.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure that'll be a consideration, I'm
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of asked Eric that same question, and really it's not the starting for the electric motors to run, but I think it's more the amount of stored energy in the battery at the colder temperatures for a chemical reaction to take place to allow the electricity to come back out for the life and how many miles they could cover.
Yeah, I believe the batteries are preheated also.
Preheated?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And also, so you know, the smaller, the half-size buses, or cutaway buses, we call them, that are 30-passenger buses, those will be gasoline because manufacturers don't make diesel platforms for those anymore, so those will be gasoline. And then the last category, we're looking at the undistributed budget, which is the essentially benefits for employees. Most of those we're seeing are pretty, you know, typical of what we see every year, including health insurance at 5.77% increase overall. Not much changing from this year.
The one question I used to always get for this are the first two, state retirement and teachers retirement. Why is the school doing so much here? And just to remind everyone in the public that the state dictates to us of how much we have to contribute to both of those. It's not something that we
Right.
negotiate with our unions. It's something that's passed down to us for the state. Social Security, that comes to us from the federal government. Workers' comp, that's a requirement. Health insurance is something that is in the contract. And the debt service is something that's always obligated from capital projects and what we've done.
Yeah, there is no opting in or out of the teacher and state retirement systems. You know, we have to do that. So at this point, with that state aid news that we got, we are sitting at a position where we have no difference, no gap to anymore at this point. The budget number is 53,807,898, and that'll be later in the meeting that the board will approve that proposition with that budget number, unless we have any issues or questions. So that's going to be Proposition 1 in May. Proposition 2 will be vehicle purchase, again, typical vehicle purchase, 3 full-size diesel buses and 2 30-passenger cutaway buses, not to exceed $511,351. And that includes an offset for 3 buses that we're going to trade in. And there's no impact on the tax really directly. We would do a bond for the purchase price of those buses. There will be 2 board seats open in May. The incumbents are not seeking re-election. And you can contact Mrs. Sadowski for more information on getting your name on the ballot.
When are those due by? April 19th, those are due.
So again, we always close with the contacts. If you want to get more information or make a comment to the state, we have Governor Cuomo's contact information and Senator Gallivan and Assemblyman DiPietro. So at this point, the next meeting we will have will be May 11th to go through our budget one final time, because we're required to do it within, I think, 7 days of the budget vote. And then the budget vote will be on May 18th. Any other questions?
And I hope so, because we have 25 minutes for you to ask them.
Good. Okay, so last month, we're expecting $1 million shortfall. And now we have additional state aid and additional federal aid. How much in total additional aid than what we were expecting?
Are you looking for what our allocation was for the next 4 years?
Yes.
Or, I have
would
those
like-
numbers.
For that,
From the federal, 3.1.
Hold on, I have it here.
there's no time limit. It's okay. We have plenty of
We
time.
have 25 minutes.
Take your time.
And Chuck offered to sing earlier, so
Yeah.
we'll be entertained.
Okay. So the set aside money for, why can I see it on this? I'm sorry.
Do you have the aid
Hold
run? Isn't it at the bottom of the aid run? I think it's
Yeah.
a 1.9 and a 1.4.
Do you have another question while I'm working on that
Yes,
one?
I have
Yeah,
another
go
question
ahead.
too. Okay, so our tax levy allowable increase is 1.96. Would that have been the same without the additional money?
Yes, that's the calculated tax cap calculation that we're allowed to impose as a tax levy. So that would not change.
That would.
No.
So
It's 3.
If-
I'll make it easy. It's 3. It's about 3.1, $3.2 million total between the
an
two of them.
additional
From the federal, because the one was 1.9 and the other is about 1.3.
okay, but
But maybe I'm not
I
answering what
know
you're asking.
you do this every day. I totally get it. Like you know what you're talking about.
That's okay.
But
There's a
just
lot of
to-
people.
Yeah, to clarify, what do each of those numbers?
So in it, the federal aid is coming in 2 different categories.
Okay.
John had them earlier, and I want to say the one is the ECCR2, and the other, can we get the presentation back up? And if you move forward to the slides. And the American Rescue Plan is 1.9. Why that 1.9 is burned in my mind is because that's what we got and they took away, but now we just get. And so the ESSER, and John will get the exact number for you.
Okay.
I'm thinking is right about 1.2 million,
That's fine. So the ECCR2 is 1.2.
approximately.
And that is supposed to be used for anything?
The next slide, I think you have that on. Or maybe the one previous.
ESSER and the American Rescue Plan, both those funds, they're tied to quite a bit of legislation and direction on what we're supposed to do with that money. So there's lots of information to go through still on that we have not had time to go through. But the initial thing is saying that it's to address learning loss due to the pandemic.
Yep.
You're supposed to use at least 20% of this federal funding to address that, in particular, at least that much money. And the other thing that we learned is that no district can use more than half of their allocated money in the first year. They really mean for you to use it multiple years, not just go through all of it in the first year.
Yep. And so how would you divide that? Are you planning on equal until 2024?
Not necessarily. We're going to come up with our educational plans and find out what we need that money for and not just say, we're going to use $500,000 this year. We're going to have a good purpose for it. We have to submit a grant to say we are going to use this money for these programs. Get that approved by the state before we see any of that money. So it has to be a thought out plan before we can access that money.
So is that money included in the budget though?
Yes, some of it's going to supplement the budget, yes. We call it supplement.
Okay, but it's in the numbers that
Yes, there is some factor of that, federal money built into that, yes.
Yeah, if you go, why don't you go to the revenue slide, because I think you wrote it there where it says state aid / federal.
Yes.
Right.
Right,
So how did you come up with 687,440?
Most of that is the state aid increase,
Okay,
and then we have an idea of how much federal money, but we don't know for sure.
so it's not in.
Some of it is built into that, yes. But it's a little more,
So let me approach it a different way. The 3.2 is not in there. And if you were to
No,
divide
it's
it over 4 years,
Right.
equitably, you would get about 800,000 a year.
Right.
But John, if I'm interpreting John right, didn't put $800,000 in
No.
this year because with the state aid coming in higher, we were able to close the gap with this part, and
Right.
then thinking of future years where the state could be pulling money back, we have that to take care of the future years coming down the road and close the gap.
And also, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state not taking back the federal dollars affected this as well, from what we had at the last budget.
by them not
session.
taking back, yes.
Yes.
That's so the state
So
aid
that's-
increase was
that's an
bigger.
additional-
Can you say that again?
The state was going to replace part of the dollars we were going to get from the state with federal money.
Right.
Okay, and that was built into the previous renditions of our budget,
Right.
but the state has since recanted on that, and so it truly is now additional money.
Right.
It's not being replaced, so that reduced the deficit right there that we were going to be facing.
Right. No, I
Okay.
get that part of it.
Okay.
The state gave us more money than we expected, and the federal.
And
Right.
the
On
state
top of
it.
wasn't
And we're getting more of the federal.
replacing, the state wasn't replacing, if they said they were gonna
Yes.
give us $1 million and the
Right.
federal government was going to give us $200,000, the state was only gonna give us $800,000.
Right.
Well, which created a $200,000 hole in our budget.
Right.
And
Which is now
they're
gone.
not, right, and that's
Yeah.
now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we are still increasing our tax levy to the maximum amount.
Yes.
I would just like to understand, we got a lot more money than we were expecting, so our deficit wasn't as much. I mean, we can't increase it more than 1%.
Mhm.
This isn't.
Right.
I know I'm looking at you because you have the answers, but it's not, I know it's not.
No, that's true, yeah. We can't go above that amount,
We cannot
1.96.
go above it, but we
You,
can.
we can't hear Michelle. I don't know if her mic is going in and out, just so you know, for the streaming and for the remote.
Yeah, she'll move it closer. She just did.
It's just going.
Okay, is that better? It might be my mic.
No.
It's better, okay. Okay, so my question is, if we're getting so much more money, why isn't our 1.9 adjusted?
It could be,
I mean,
it could go above that too. It's,
We would have less
We've
money allocated then to up through 2023 for the first and September 2024.
we haven't touched a penny of that.
Yes, we did. Part of that is included in the dollars that we're getting from that $684,000 increase that you
Yeah,
see
I think
for state aid and Fed stimulus. Part of that money is in there.
So in the
That was my question, like how much money is in there for it?
how much federal money is in that?
687,000, yeah.
I thought we said that was state aid.
Approximately maybe 400 of that, 400,000,
Thank you.
approximately.
That, yeah,
It's
that's
hard
my
to-
only question.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like 400.
I mean, it's not,
gotta be
I'm not trying to
almost
trick you, I swear.
480.
well, but yeah.
Okay, so we did use some of that money. We're
Oh,
not
yeah.
just
It
hoarding
will,
it.
as they call, what's supposed to be used to supplement the budget, not replace funds, but supplement
Yeah,
funds, yeah.
got it. Okay. That was my question.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
was looking more globally at it. That was my issue. Was your question? I just wasn't hearing what you were saying.
Well,
You said it
I
well.
mean, I think that
Yeah.
people are going to ask,
That's
why are
definitely,
you raising taxes to the maximum when you got all this extra money? And we need an answer. And
Yeah.
and what are we going to do with it? Like, we need to maybe supplement the learning loss that has occurred, because it has shown that
Yep.
kids are falling behind in math and ELA and all of these other things. So we need to explain. That's our job, to explain why.
And if down the road, 2 or 3 years, there is a very large CPI increase and a very large tax levy increase, we could possibly supplement or maybe at that time bring that down a little bit by using some of this federal money then too,
yeah,
in
so,
the future.
Yes.
Yeah, but my question, my question is, when we're saying that, we're taking this money that is, to support learning loss,
Yes.
and
And keeping
I never
it to
thought-
prevent tax increases. That's not what it's for. It's for learning.
but I guess every single budget season, everybody has heard me say, where's the list of everything that we've cut when we haven't been, over the last years? And now there's this money. Is there anything? And I'm not questioning a baby within that money that's already in there. It's already allocated to these things. But are there things that we need now to support that learning loss? Or are you just, I don't want to say, are we waiting to see what that loss is? I mean, I just want to understand that too, because that's a good question.
And the point of that federal
Go ahead.
money is it's for a very specific purpose related to COVID, and it has a very specific end date to it. So these are programs that you will be doing. A lot of them will be short term and have an end date on them that you're going to
Yeah.
be doing, and they will not continue in the future.
so what we have already is,
But I'm sorry, Doug, but we don't have any programs that are guaranteed forever. Right? We have already lost a lot of things
Yeah.
that were in place for a very long time. That doesn't prevent us from doing them now. Right? I mean, you can't say, well, we're going to lose this in 5 years and not do it because we might lose it sometime. We probably will.
I think that's probably one of the most important statements for the public to hear. Because I know for Sharon, I think I've heard her say it, Chuck say it, I can't remember what other board members have said it, but they said during their career, all they've seen is cuts each year. And so realizing that depending on the state, it's very fluid, we have to keep working on it. So to work towards learning loss, we already have 3 elementary teachers planned in the budget to address needs in the elementary level. And so therefore, we have to now look also on top of that for secondary level of what we can do for RTI and support for them.
So maybe that's a question, that is definitely a question more for you guys, not, I don't want to put John on the spot. 'Cause
No, that's why I brought that over to this
curriculum.
side of the house, yeah.
That's super important. In the 9 years that I've been on the board, this is the first time we've gotten more money than we expected. First time.
First time, yeah.
And probably,
That was my question was, I think, for people to hear, when we say we put it in here and we put it in here and it sort of disappears into that budget, but for us to hear, what is that enabling us to do to address what a lot, has been a big conversation is, where are our kids and what do they need? And so it's great when you start giving me that list. I love hearing that. I think that's good for everybody to hear.
Right. So we don't have a big list because what
Okay.
we're looking to do is address the learning loss. Right now, we have 3 elementary teachers, possibly a 4th one that we're going to be looking to provide services at the elementary level. We still have to look to see what the needs are at the secondary level. With the federal money, the way it's built, we should be fine if we want to add that, and we want to make sure we have it for years to come. Mary Jo has given me summer school of what she's looking to do for a summer school program to enhance that. We've been working with BOCES to see what they are going to offer. And then there's the compensatory services that John mentioned that I won't say is our idea because it wasn't. It was a requirement that we have to do for certain types of students for next year that we'll be taking care of.
Okay.
And a lot of this is
Thanks for the dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we still have that list that we have shown every year at the budget work sessions of all the things that we've lost over the past 10 years. And we're going to be looking at that to see if any, and I mean, many of those things may have changed dramatically in education. So we might not want to bring something that we have lost back, but maybe improve,
Right, and that's
right? I mean, I'm sure you have lots of ideas. I just want to,
Yeah. Oh,
you know, and I
yeah,
know that
I
you're
can
working
name
on it.
one
I
right
just want
now.
to
It
say
has to do with
that you're
reading.
working on it. That's all. So it's
there's what to do with reading, and
reading. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And that's where in looking at this right now of having these, we're able to close that budget, that gap for next year. We don't want to go crazy with putting different things in. We want to take care of that learning loss and then be prudent in how we're going to do that and have that money over the next 4 years.
The only concern I have about that is that the learning loss is right now. And so we do need to be aggressive with improving that, decreasing the gap as fast as possible and not being too prudent because that learning loss, fingers crossed, is not going to continue for the next 5 years.
Right, so don't take my, so that, yeah, so glad you said that because I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying by prudent. Prudent does, I don't want it to be interpreted as foolish. Wherever we see the learning loss at the grade levels, we will do this year to see, to take care of what we need to take care of. So in September, they will be taking the Ames web testing, and we'll, go ahead. And then from those tests, we'll say, okay, here's where we need to do additional resources beyond the 3 that we have already.
So coming up in the spring of this year, we'll be doing Ames Web and iReady in reading and math, K-8, as we normally do, and running records. We're going to be comparing that information from the information we've gathered throughout the year. We're anticipating that there will be learning loss, and we're hoping the proposal I provided Doug, and we're still reviewing, is a hopes of jump starting and filling that gap over the summer so that we'll see a reduction in that learning loss. And then in September, we'll take another measure of Ames Web and iReady, and we'll continue to attack the shortfall that we see going forward. And we're also hoping to get some SEL support in there as well.
So what you might see during the fiscal year next year,
Wait,
Is-
let me tell Mary Jo, that is so fantastic. Thank you.
sorry,
It's all of our ideas. That's what teamwork does.
Can I just take a second to ask you to publicly say that any kind of learning loss is not a reflection of our teaching staff?
Thank you for highlighting that. And yes, the work that the teachers have done this year and the students and their families has been nothing short of wonderful. And it is not anyone's particular fault. It is the result of this pandemic.
Thank you.
I
I just think it's really important that we acknowledge that our teaching staff still excels at what they do.
Yeah, I agree.
I have a question. In regards to the Ames testing, is that optional for the students to take those Ames tests?
no, it isn't. That's a school test.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure that we were getting a full scope of any kind of learning loss. I know the teachers have done a fantastic job, and it's been quite a challenge to try to keep the students up with stuff. And I thought that maybe, which we're probably already doing, is getting more assistance for the teachers to try to keep the kids as on track as possible, but I'm not sure to the extent of that with every teacher, how much assistance are getting with, because so many students are having so many challenges right now.
Can I just say that I think this is an important conversation because when we're looking at the numbers and we're following along, it doesn't always come to life. And so we did get this money, hearing that all the plans and all the ways that you're going to be, looking at where you need it and using it it really does bring it to life for people. And one more thought I was just having when we were thinking is, yep, I always say every single year there's a list, and that list has been because we've been trimming a budget that was already it was as trimmed as we could be, so the only thing to do was lose. I think this is different, and it's important that people hear this conversation now. This is money that has a life, that is not money that we can, we'll see what we need then, but that if, when we present programs, presenting them and saying, we know for the next 2 years after recovering from this global pandemic, we need to do these things, and we can do it with this money. I think it feels not like cutting. It feels like the finite to address the need, which is the purpose. And so I think as we present those, I think that can help us to feel that, one day hopefully they go away because we don't need them. Right? So it's purpose. So I think in presenting it that way, it makes more sense to us, and it doesn't feel, when those programs end, it won't feel like we're losing things. It means they did their job of getting us where we need to be.
Yes, well said. Yeah, well said. And that's exactly what they should be for addressing the learning loss.
And I really like the approach of seeing where we are now, putting things in place that are immediate, and also pausing and reviewing everything that's been done, and then utilizing, just being thoughtful and, more long-term with the money, not just like blowing it to, tomorrow.
Right, and I think that's really speaks
It's
to
important.
the community.
Yes.
The community appreciates and supports well thought out practice.
Yes.
And that's what we pride ourselves on, that it's really, it would be very easy to go and spend this money, but we won't, because we're being very responsible and respectful of how we use it.
Yes. And that is, we know that's how the community feels and how the administration works, and the district has always prided itself on being a great value, right? We're exceptionally fiscally responsible and make long-term plans so that we can move forward. And I think that with there's a great communication thing with COVID, just not being able to have people here in person hearing that. It's just really helpful to have that discussion repeatedly. So thank you for all of that.
And the budget I presented tonight, the 2.3% increase on our budget, that's a plan for next year. It's a general plan for next year. The things we're talking about here, the additional new things, those are going to be in addition, and those are going to access the federal money. And as we come up with plans and we approve them, we say this is good, we're going to do it. These are going to be additional things we're going to add next year that aren't built into the 2.3% increase that we're doing tonight.
All right. Anything else? Well done. You're perfect. Look at that.
Thanks.
I know, 1 minute.
We could plan it any better.
1 minute.
That's perfect. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mary Jo.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we're going to call our regular meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all who've come to observe the meeting of the Iroquois Central School District's Board of Education. There are 2 periods of recognition of guests listed on the meeting agenda. Speakers may offer comments related to school operations and programs, but the board cannot hear personnel complaints against any individual associated with the school system. Please address these concerns to the appropriate administrator. If you wish to be recognized, you should fill out an appropriate form and turn it into the district clerk as per policy 1514, public participation at board meetings. Public comment is limited to 15 minutes total unless the board suspends this limit. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Additionally, no more than 3 people may speak on a single topic unless the board also waives this limitation. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting, which means that we will not be engaging in a dialogue with members of the community this evening. District personnel will follow up with you regarding your concerns. Rest assured that we are listening carefully and take seriously what you have to say. Please demonstrate respect by speaking to the issues, sharing ideas and opinions, but not engaging in personal attacks. The board appreciates your willingness to share your concerns and celebrations. Please be advised that this meeting is being streamed live and the recording will be posted on the Iroquois website. And I'm looking up and I can see some new friends here. This part of the evening always makes me smile when we have our students joining us for our school board meeting. And I think we have with us Alma primary students Knox, who's in 3rd grade, and Scarlett, who's in kindergarten. Give me a wave if that's you guys. Is that you guys? Welcome to the school board meeting. Are you ready to start us tonight with the pledge? Okay, I'll hand it over to you, and you guys can take it away.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow, that was fantastic. Did you guys practice? Yeah, I can tell you practiced because you did that beautifully. Good job. Way to represent Elma Primary. Thank you very much. And we have another student joining us today who I saw giving us away before. I think we have from the high school senior, Ryan, who is going to give us an update on what's going on at the high school.
Hello.
Hi, Ryan.
Am I speaking now?
Yeah, if you're ready.
Okay, cool. So in high school, I am part of 2 major clubs, LEAD and NHS, as well as a student tech organization and the announcements. Most of the events that we're pushing for LEAD and NHS are stuff that's outside or that can be social distance and whatnot. What I push for personally is like more events. A lot of the stuff that we do it and it's good, but there's stuff that we want to get done inside. For example, this year we wanted to do, every year for LEAD, we do this dance party for special needs kids. Obviously that's something that we can't do because it's a dance, it's inside, it's not social distance. And I understand that those types of events can't exactly be going on right now. So we're trying to replace those events with stuff like we're doing a kickball game or, stuff that's outside, like scavenger hunts, stuff that can be social distance and whatnot. And yeah, so those are the things I'd like to push for. Is just a lot of the events are easy to set up, but they're still restricted where, it's hard to be inside. It's hard to be, close together, which is understandable. It's unsafe. But as stuff starts to get open back up, I'd like to see the school also get open back up. And I know like K-8 is coming back full time and the shields are going away. And as those restrictions get lifted, I'd like to see more events able to be held. So 2 major events that I know every student wants to see is prom and graduation, especially it's for seniors. Being a senior, those are also pretty important to me. And for the rest of the high school, I know that I have a sister, she's a freshman. She missed out on a bunch of stuff that we usually do for stuff like LEAD or NHS or whatever. It's hard to get involved when there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of communication just because we're not all in school at one time. And there's not a whole lot that we can do in school and stuff like that. So that's all I really want to push for today is as the restrictions get lifted as quickly as possible. And I know our principals are working hard on that, and our superintendents and whatnot, and obviously you guys. That's all I'm pushing for, is for more stuff to be opened up, and that's it. So.
Thank you, and we appreciate you advocating for your classmates. I hear you. We hear you. I know there's lots going on behind the scenes with everybody just saying, how can we creatively do that? And so we look forward to hopefully bringing you guys lots of events as you. Congratulations on graduating. We're not there yet, but you're almost there.
Thank you.
Mrs. Siglowski, before we move forward, I just wanted to recognize Ryan as being a great member of the class of 2021. He was really a strong contributor to the senior class and during his past 4 years of high school. He's one of those type of kiddos that makes things happen kind of behind the scenes and doesn't seek out recognition, but thinking of somebody that would represent what we're going through right now, proper representative of the class of 2021, Ryan Curran is definitely a top-notch class act individual. I'm very proud of what he has been able to accomplish, especially with the tech committee, or the techsters, I like to call them, but the ones that help us when it comes to the computers. He's been a very strong leader when it comes to helping out with computer repairs and items of that nature. So Ryan, definitely want to give you your proper credit and recognition, and thank you for everything that you've done for Iroquois.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would concur with Dr. Ramirez. Ryan has been extremely helpful through the entire COVID situation and technology, and he's one of the leaders of the students.
Ryan, keep pushing, keep working with Dr. Ramirez and the administrators, keep asking those questions, think out of the box. I know that from what I just heard from Dr. Ramirez and Dr. Dudek, that you and your fellow classmates will be able to come up creatively to be able to host those events. But keep pushing, keep asking those questions, and keep working collaboratively with your fellow classmates to make it happen, because it sounds like you're on the right track.
Of course.
Thank you so much for joining us. Are Knox and Scarlett still there? I know I see their camera, but I'm not sure they're still there. Maybe they already left. Maybe they're doing their homework. But I just want to recognize that they are not Alma Primary students. I apologize for that. They are Marilla Primary. You guys go to Marilla, right? Yeah, my kids went to Marilla. Go Marilla. So we'll make sure that you give credit to the right primary school. So once again, thank you. And Marilla is proud of you, but all of Iroquois is proud of you too. So thank you from all the way from our youngest in kindergarten all the way up to our seniors. That's why this is a great part of our evening. So thank you, everybody. We will let you know that you are welcome to stay for all of our board meetings if you'd like to, but nobody will be offended if you do sign out and go and do all of those things that you need to do for school. We understand. So once again, thank you for joining us. And Dr. Ramirez, thank you for joining us with Ryan and that well-deserved congratulations to him.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night. And that brings us on our agenda to our board discussion and news worth sharing. There's a few housekeeping things we need to take care of. One is to talk about, we have the BOCES budget vote coming up on April 20th. And so we're going to need to organize a short meeting of the board to vote on the BOCES budget and the BOCES Board of Education members. It is a short meeting. There may be one or two other personnel resolutions that need action also. So we need to decide what time would work for everybody to hold that meeting. And everybody could attend because of the briefness of the meeting. It's fine if everybody would like to attend virtually if they'd like to. So what works for everybody? And I think Cindy is there and she can help us. Is this the one we usually do in the morning?
Yeah, this is the one we usually do in the morning. Cindy's pulling a mic over next door to turn it on, so I'm just kind of chiming in here. And so it's the one we usually do in the morning. It's usually 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and we need to have a quorum. And the major item is to approve for BOCES. There's no discussion. I don't do a report, and there's typically nothing for board discussion or news worth sharing either.
Correct.
do you,
It actually has to be done on the 20th. All component districts do it on the 20th.
what time usually do you do it, Cindy?
I think 8 o'clock looks good for our schedule here. Jane's free?
I would not be able to do 8 o'clock, but
Okay. You can't either. Would earlier be better?
What was
for
the
you?
date again?
It's Tuesday, April 20th.
April 20th, yeah.
Would
I
you-
should be able to do it.
Would you rather do 7:30? Would that work for you, or is that still, you still can't do it?
I can do 7:30.
No, 8 o'clock is good for me. Either one is good for me.
Okay.
Dean, Gunner, Chuck?
Gunner?
I mean, the earlier the better for my schedule.
Yeah.
The 7:30 works for me if we can do that.
Chuck?
That's okay for me too.
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh,
I'm
we
good
say
with 7:30.
7:30 a.m. on the 20th.
Okay, I can make it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then
And
moving
it'll be
on.
a Zoom meeting again?
Yes, it will.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on board discussion, one thing I want to talk about and then let Michelle and Chuck or anybody, and if the rest of the board has questions or about this, I want to give a little bit of an update on our strategic planning. Monday night, we had another meeting. We've had several meetings, but Monday night was our last meeting with our strategic planning. And things are moving along really well. There's, I think, excitement, enthusiasm, some new exciting components of it coming out. When you start meeting, you're at the beginning of the work, and then you're starting to get deep and diving down into what we have, asking questions. Things are emerging as things that we know that we want to be exploring. So the initial part of it with our community was to do the survey, to get input from all stakeholders as we move to create a 5-year strategic plan with measurable outcomes that we can continue to measure through those and reflect and refine throughout that process, really setting the vision for where Iroquois wants to go in the future. Just to give a little bit of an update, so much of our discussion revolves a lot about the pride that the members on the core team have, and that showed in our survey results from all stakeholders. That pride and strong sense of tradition in Iroquois and pride in all the things that we've done, but also this excitement about, okay, now where are we going? Where do we want to go next? So that preserving those traditions, preserving who we are, but laying a course for our future. And it's that kind of energy, I think, is exciting. So the survey went out to all different stakeholders, community members, teachers, students, and we have had the data back, been looking at that data. It causes you to wonder, question, discuss things. And that involves the core team of about 41 people. And now we're at the point where as you do those discussions, we want to involve more people again and kind of get a touch base and get more information from people. So PLC, the consulting firm that we've been working with, are going to be facilitating focus groups with the different stakeholder groups. I believe they held their first one today with the middle school teachers. One of the ones they're going to be holding for middle school teachers, if I'm correct.
Yes, that was today.
Okay. And they're going to be doing focus groups with some students at the middle and the high school levels, some teachers in the different building age levels, and we also are going to be having community member focus groups, and those will be very easy to access. We spent some time talking about how can we get that information out to people, and I believe that's in the process. If I come back to that in 1 second, but it's going to be, you don't have to RSVP, you don't have to write a letter, you don't have to be invited. It's going to be, there's a meeting like this, hop on, listen to what's going on. Some questions will be asked. Some of them are just general questions, like what do you want to hear? What do you want us to know? What do you want us to hear? Some are questions based on digging a little deeper into survey data that was looked at and thought about. And the purpose of this is to just get more voices, more opportunity for our community to be a part of this process. it is very easy to, although we did have, some great survey participation in different stakeholder groups, it is challenging. Everybody is busy. Sometimes we see something, we mean to do it. This is another opportunity to have your voice heard in kind of a quick in and out kind of a way with a focus group. Does anybody there, can you remind, the dates are going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks, but I'm specifically thinking of the community member and the family ones and how somebody would access. I know that we're going to have the meeting link, and I know that they're looking at QR codes, but want to make sure people know how to get to that so that they can participate. If we want to chime in at the end, we can. I just don't have all of those dates in front of me.
Okay. Parents right now are for Tuesday, April 20th at 12:30 and Tuesday, April 20th at 7 p.m. And community and business is Thursday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. Those will be shared via the website, also, I believe, on Facebook, and that will include the information on how to get to the Zoom link.
Thank you. That was really fast. I'm impressed with how fast you pulled it up. So when you see information about focus groups, that's what it is. It's not a long-term commitment. It's a one-time event to come in and have some of your thoughts heard, and we would appreciate as much participation as possible. I very optimistically asked the question, what happens if you get hundreds of people and the meeting is too big? And the answer was, that's a great problem to have, and we can handle it. So come anybody that wants to come to those community and parent focus groups. Does anybody else that's been at our meeting? The next stages will be moving forward to establish what word am I losing here? Not focus groups, but the
Task force?
Task forces, thank you. I'm like focus groups. The task forces. And task forces will be, once areas are identified that based on the data, based on the focus groups, based on getting this qualitative and quantitative data that we've been getting and digging and discussing it, what are the areas that are showing up that we need? So as we move forward in the spring, you start to hear about task force. Those will be a series of meetings, not as much of a long-term commitment as the core group is, but targeted onto specific topics that we might be exploring. So that'll be open again for anybody who would like to participate in those. I know lots of our other board members have expressed interest in being in different task force, so that's where we're headed. And it's been an exciting process. I don't know if Chuck or Michelle have anything to say, or if any other board members have any questions.
I think you covered it pretty well. I will say, definitely, the last meeting, you could, feel the excitement, starting to build. We really are starting to move forward. So I think the focus groups are a great opportunity, especially for our community members, to express any concerns, they have. So I would encourage you, if you have the time, to try to participate in that focus group, as well as our parents.
And I think the facilitators do a great job of making that a great process.
Yep, and the only addition I have is to say thank you to the multitude of faculty, staff, administrators, community members, parents, and students who participated in the core group. And take the opportunity, hopefully people will take the opportunity to check in with the focus groups and consider serving briefly on a task force. Thank you. Task force, yeah, that is specific. There'll be different, the core group is working on kind of the overall piece, and then based on survey and focus groups, task forces will be tasked with yeah tasked with specific categories of things like, facilities and what they haven't been determined yet. So that's part of the focus group. Anyway, that's it.
All right, are there other items that people have for board discussion and news worth sharing? Are there people in person waving their hands for me or no? No, that's it?
Nope, we're all just listening to you.
Okay,
The only thing I have is a reminder that the dessert forum, I think, is also April 20th during the day.
I don't know that one.
Hang on.
I know. It's
got it
okay
in
that
my
registration is
calendar.
closed because then there will be enough desserts for everybody. That's fine. Just looking forward to it.
I want to say it's the 26th. No, it's the virtual program. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're correct. Correct you are. Yes, I did. Also, just the only other thing is I will attend the delegate assembly meeting tomorrow at the Erie County Association of School Boards. I know Sharon or Jane couldn't make it, so we'll be covered.
Thanks for covering that for me.
and a reminder one more time about school board petitions. Line is, did you say the 19th?
The 19th at 5 o'clock is the deadline.
Okay, so April 19th, that's at 5 o'clock. And someone could still get one if they wanted one, as long as they have it back by that date.
Correct.
So, talk to Cindy. All right. And with that, we're moving on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so first thing I'd like to talk about is the capital project update, and John can jump in at any time if he feels like it, because he's at these meetings too. And really just letting everyone know all the documents were sent to the State Education Department for review, and they have accepted them, so they're in their queue, so we'll be just waiting now with the timeline. We do have a meeting tomorrow morning, and hopefully we'll have an update of what we're looking at with that timeline, because that's rather fluid, whether it's 4 months or 6 months. So then we'll have an idea. It doesn't, not guaranteed, but it gives us a good idea. We did have meetings, as a reminder, with the science department, so they really contributed to the parts that they wanted, and or how they wanted the rooms designed. And we met with the athletic coaches, and so therefore that went very well. We'll still have some future follow-up meetings with them for other things they have to select, but right now we're in a good spot. So I would imagine over the next 2-3 months, we'll be going back, revisiting with principals, their buildings, revisiting the diagrams, making sure everyone's on board, so that when it is approved by the state, we'll be ready to go out to bid, and then keep moving forward with the project. Are there any questions? Okay.
I do have a quick question. With the STEM rooms, have we considered, or maybe you've already done this? I know that we have business people coming in from businesses around the community. Have you had their input too, as far as like?
We haven't yet.
Future?
The reason we haven't yet is because we're actually tomorrow, because we're accepting a retirement resignation from one person tonight. We're posting for positions. We would like to get the people that will be using those rooms in and hired, so when they're meeting, they have everyone's input, and we're able to make changes to them. They're called change orders. So once they're in, we'll be able to make those change orders to the state, so the teachers that are in them will have input directly with what's going on. I want the teachers there, so when the public people are giving input, they're all together collaborating, not just the public giving input. We make a design, and then the teacher comes in and wants to change it.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you want the teacher who's in the room to
Yep.
have, and for sure. And change orders are included in the.
They're included in the total dollar package, but we would have to send those to SED and then they get reapproved, but that's a much shorter process.
But it's not
Because-
additional money.
It's not additional money. No,
Yeah.
we cannot go over the dollar amount we have. In fact, if I remember right, that was one of the things the board said we wanted, if there's any additional funds, that was one of the three main areas that we wanted to push it towards. You know, when the bids come in, if there's funds to try to improve the STEM rooms additionally.
I hesitate to ask this question, but I've had a couple people bring it up to me. With the pandemic, we have seen an increase in things like wood and construction costs and whatnot. What happens if we can't get a bid that fits into the budgeted capital project? Can you kind of just quickly answer that so that those people who are wondering that question?
Very quickly, when the unless John wants to go, I see him grabbing his mic. Very quickly, when the public votes on a capital project for a dollar amount, that's the maximum expenditure we can expend, so we cannot go over that dollar amount. If we want to do additional work, we'd have to re-go out for a bid. So we would, depending on how much we are off, we would look at the scope that we were doing and then make modifications of where it was appropriate. So maybe if there's a road somewhere that's or a parking lot, we might not resurface that. We might do that, let that go to the next project. We would have to reanalyze it. I'm using that as an example, just because I think it's one that would be non-controversial. But we'd come back to the board, have a meeting, talk about it, and then modify that. Or if it just seems to be a bad time for bidding, you could wait another month, which is great with where we're going out, and then you could bid it a month later, and hopefully they'd be more competitive because the market would have changed.
And while there have been increases in some materials, we've heard from our architects, people who do this stuff with schools a lot, there's not a lot of work out there right now, which is good. So the contractors seem hungrier to get work scheduled. So if we hit it in the fall, we could be in a good place to get better bids than we expect, actually.
Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. I forgot. I thought we were still just board
It's your
report. So
turn.
it's my turn. Completely forgot there.
We're like,
Sorry.
he's not
Faux
done.
pas. I look back to you. So that's for the capital project. So something I don't have on here, just the meeting from last time, and I want to thank the board again, and great job of pushing forward. We sent letters out about the proposition and the resolution that you passed about trying to change the distancing in the performing arts. We did have Senator Gallivan. He did send on and advocate for us with the New York State Commissioner of Health, Commissioner Zucker. So he did receive ours and then actually send a letter out on his own that was supporting us in that. So thank you to him for that support, and thank you to you for supporting our performing arts. So the next thing I'd like to go into, and they kind of blend together, will be the New York State response to the CDC guidance and then instructional update. So I'm not going to have a break in between. They'll all blend together, and stop me at any point if you want to ask me any questions. So the first thing I want to do is thank everyone, administrators, teachers, Board of Education, for everything they did, because it was a really proactive endeavor to get where we could act on the new guidance from the state in the manner we did. We had a lot of plans in place. Then we modified it when the CDC came out. We reviewed them. They came out. New York State came out. I think it was like 7 o'clock on a Friday night. Had a meeting Monday morning with each of the different grade levels, and so that was able to go very smoothly because of that work that was proactively done. Because way back, I forget what board meeting or Connect Ed message we talked about, being ready by March 29th if New York State came out, and being ready within 5 days, and we were able to hit that target that we set back then. We did have a survey in between there before New York State came out, kind of went with an inkling of what was going on, and that survey was kind of simple. If, coming back, would you select in-person or 100% remote? And just let the public know, it came back about 93% wanted in-person and 7% remote. And why I say about and kind of there, because we didn't have all the facts. We didn't have New York State. It was so we could get a feeling for our planning of what was going on. And with that survey, and even when we came out with our plan, I did have a question. Since we're coming back in person with the K through 8, why aren't we having hybrid 2 for them? What's happening to the hybrid? We've been doing it so long. And really that comes down to, and I explained to the parent, to looking at the staff we have, space we have. We can't have the number of classrooms for in-person and then have additional classrooms. We don't have the space for the hybrid, because if you have the students coming back Monday, Tuesday, and then a Thursday, Friday, and then the other people in person, they're all in the same class, you would be mixing the groups. So therefore, you wouldn't be getting your hybrid for the safety that was doing at that time. So I just wanted to point that one thing out. I'm going to go through the packet. It's 24 pages from New York State. I am not going to go through every page. I have highlighted the key things, because if we really don't talk about it, it's going to remain the same. So one of the things, you look at the high school, and I was asked this because we had a virtual town hall meeting at 5 o'clock, and I was asked this during the meeting. What about, I think it was, but I know I've been asked it, what about the high school? What would it take to get back? Because the high school is staying hybrid. The reason it's staying hybrid is because we do not cohort at that level. And so therefore, without that cohorting, Erie County is above the transmission rate of 100 per 100,000. So therefore, they are staying in hybrid. And I can see Michelle pointing her mic over, so I know she has a question.
Can you explain the idea of cohorts?
And that's a great question, because I've heard that many times, so everyone can hear it. There are two ways we are using the word cohorting, so I can really understand why it's causing some confusion. The first is you have an A cohort and a B cohort. Students coming in on a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday.
So, Doug, sorry. So it's a name for a group,
It's
right?
a name for a group. Cohort
okay.
means group.
Okay.
Yep. And so you have these two groups. How they're referring to cohort in the document for whether you, if you're in a high risk that you can come in person or not, is how are students grouped once they're at school. So if you think of an elementary school, that's the easiest way to think of a cohort or a group. You have Mrs. Smith, a first grade teacher. Her class is with all the same students all day long. That's a cohort of students. Because that's a cohort of students, you can have in person at a lesser distance than you could if you did not cohort. Very easy to see in the elementary. When you get to the middle school, high school, with the change of classes, there seems to be more mixing going on. What was established way back in the fall in the middle school was they actually had cohorting. The same group of students sat all day together in a classroom. So at that point in September, they weren't even changing classrooms. If you remember, the teachers were moving from classroom to classroom. So the students were together at 7th grade, and they were with the same group of students all day long. Some came on A day, some came on B day, but third period, Mrs. Jones had this group of students always third period. By having that cohort, we're able to go to in-person with 3 feet, because we can put the people that came on Monday and Tuesday with the people on Thursday and Friday, one group of students that Mrs. Jones sees third period. All those students go on to see Mr. Jones the next period. And so they're together. Whereas in the high school, we're unable to do this because there's those singletons, the electives, and there's mixing going on. There's students that are juniors and seniors that might be mixing in classes, or juniors and sophomores because of how they work through their classes or when they're taking electives. And we tried many, many different ways. The administration has been worked on it way back in the fall. They've been looking at it again of trying to find a way to cohort, and it just can't be done. And you can see that paralleled really across pretty much all the schools around us, because the high school is just of how the schedules run. And that's why you were unable to have the hybrid at the high school.
Doug, what does the percentage have to drop to in order to get away from the cohort restriction of 6 feet?
Okay, and I misspoke there. I said get away from the hybrid in it. I said that with the cohort in the high school. The numbers, got to jump through here a little bit. I want to make sure they're right. There are 4 classification areas, and any good document, they have them on multiple different pages. So there's low, moderate, substantial, and high risk. Those are the 4 areas. So the low, and there's 2 categories for this you have to look at. So I'll start with 1. For the low, for the amount of new cases, 0 to 9 per 100,000 would make you low. 10 to 49 per 100,000 would make you moderate.
And this is at the county level.
This is at the county level, how they're looking at it now, yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. The substantial is 50 to 99, and high is 100 or greater, which for 100 per 100,000, that's 1/10 of 1% new cases per 100,000 is where it is.
And right now, the Erie County is at,
Erie County has about 350 new cases.
and we would have to get down to under 100.
Under 100
Okay.
in order for that to change. Because if we were to drop to substantial risk for the high school, they can maintain physical distance of 3 feet between students in classrooms. Cohorting is recommended when possible, but it's not necessary.
You know, I know in the past, I think the county was using zip code for, you know, some of their reporting and calculating. Is there any chance or anything we can do to advocate for that instead of having a county-wide, you know, number? Because obviously the numbers are different in every community. And, you know, I mean, we all want to try to get our kids back, you know, in the classroom as soon as possible. Whereas if we could look at either, you know, by townships or by zip code, you know, that we fall, we might be able to, you know, get that number down where we do fall into a low category or, you know, moderate or whatever the designation is that allows us to move away from that cohort requirement.
So in looking at that, because you're right, there is a website, I go to it, I check it regularly to see, one of the metrics I use to see how safe it is around us for what we should be doing at school. And while I was on a meeting today with New York State Department of Health, listening to the webinar explaining this document, I looked up the population, and it was just a quick look up, so I think it was actually 2019 for Alma Marilla and Wales, got around 20,000 people, so I'm sure it's a little higher than that now. And then I looked at our rate of new cases over the past 14 days. I just used April on what I've been tracking, and we average about 5.1 into new cases per day. So times that by 7, you're about 35, 36 is what we're averaging. We would need to get down to 20 cases over the 7-day period. So we're about 16 too many in our area if we were to look at those. But you asked about advocating, and that's what I'm going to start exploring to see what we can do. We're not there yet, so I don't want people to think, oh, we're there yet, we can do it. I'm going to start looking at exploring it to see if there is something.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like, Doug, even with those numbers, even though we wouldn't fall within, you know, the number range if we went by zip code or township, it seems like we're still at a better number than what the county is.
It seems to, but I think there's also more fluctuation in our area because there's a lower population. It's more consistent with the county. And there are some times where it said, "Whoa, you know, I heard 3 months ago Alma was the highest." I'll say 3 months. I might be off on my timeline. And then recently I heard it was another township that was the highest. So it keeps moving around, and that's why it's so important for people to be very thoughtful in how and what they are doing, keeping their masks on, and not thinking, "Oh, in our area it's okay." It's not in our area. It is in our area. We do have COVID in our area, and we will get the variants in our area, and it's just being proactively conscious. And I always keep saying how impressed I am with the students, with them constantly wearing their masks. They're very good at it. I see. In fact, I think some of them even become so subconscious that it's on that they go walking around when they could take it off and they leave it on, and I think that's great.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm wondering if that's something we should start to advocate for. Maybe not necessarily, you know, that if, you know, we can advocate for township or zip code. Should our townships or zip codes rise above and outpace the county number, which might be lower, that we could use the lower of both. And the reason I'm saying that is we do have a delegate assembly meeting tomorrow with the Erie County Association of School Boards. So we're going to have a lot of other school district representation there. And, you know, it might be worthwhile to get their thoughts on that. And, you know, we do have an active group as far as, you know, trying to.
That would be great. I think with the active group and how this came about, and Erie County Department of Health constantly, I have multiple documents where they say the guidance for schools comes from New York State Department of Health. And that's where this document came from, of what we're following is the New York State Department of Health. So I think that's where the advocacy would need to start, is with them. So that's where, you know, if I would, right now, without having done any looking into it and knowing what we've been through for the past few months, is I think really the New York State Department of Health would be the place to start.
So the state is the one that designated it at a county level?
Yes, yes.
Correct,
yes.
okay.
They're the ones
Okay.
who's putting it that way. And I think there might be some leeway in here if we can get them on board with it, because they can change their mind as they have shown.
Well, it does seem that we have a little bit more influence now as far as our state legislature goes, and, you know, we have some really good advocates, you know, for us, and, you know, I know it's the State Department of Health's decision, but, I mean, they also listen to our legislators, so.
And I think that makes sense, because they did come out with, and I don't remember the names of them, where we were yellow and orange, if you remember way back in December, where they were looking at local areas. But again, you got to think of where people are working. So if everyone in here is going downtown Buffalo to work, what are they bringing back? And I think that's where the data, you really need to look at the data and the science and follow what that is saying.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't want to, you know, just skirt the issues and put anybody in harm's way. You know, it's still, you know, a health and safety issue, but we also want to maximize the opportunities for our students too, and, you know, try to get them back to the in-person.
And so that's the one everyone is looking at right now, the number of new cases. There is a second one in here, actually, where it talks about the percentage of positive tests in the past 7 days. So the first one was new cases, and this is the percentage of positive cases. And I'm like, what's the difference? So, you know, I love your blank looks right now, because that's how I felt for a day or two. And what that is, it's the type of molecular diagnostic test. So I heard that. I had the same blank look on my face. So I actually called the Erie County Department of Health. And what that is that's the PCR test. And what they're looking at with that, with the percentage of positive tests, are people that are getting reinfected. So for the first one, it's just the new cases, and the other one is if there's anyone that's getting a reinfection from it. So it's a little more inclusive. But that one is up to 10%. So it's almost 100 times more room for what could be happening. And I don't think there's 100 times more people going out there reinfected than there are, because of just what the science is saying of, you know, you have the 3 months from your first one where you're typically not reinfected. There are cases, so people need to be careful. If you've had COVID, you should wear your mask and keep social distancing. You're not free, you know, to walk around, do whatever you want, but you still have to be cautious. But there's another metric in there, but that's not one we're hitting now.
I just have a question too, is if they were to be able to go with the lower of any one of these, how long would it have to be sustained for? Because, and then if you put something in place, how long would that last for if the next week it changes and goes up again? So I'm not sure how long something like that would last.
Well, the state said that we have to go by the higher of the two, and it's a 7-day running average. But if we hit it on day 7, I wouldn't want to make a change the next day. I would want to see that is maintained. I would want to see the graphs going down. Right now, if anyone's watched the news, they understand the number of COVID cases are going up. So therefore, I wouldn't be looking to make, jump tomorrow on that. But we would be prepared. I know the high school would be ready to go to the 3-foot distance.
To Chuck's point, I think it's a great idea to advocate going forward, because, you know, we don't know what's happening over the summer. right? The variants
Yes,
are, I mean, I
yes.
think that second
Yeah.
idea of the new cases is probably geared more toward seeing variants coming in and people getting reinfected. So, I think it's a great idea to advocate to maybe be more local because we don't know when this will end, right? So to be prepared for September is a great idea. My only caution is Iroquois has like 6 different zip codes.
Yeah.
So it would be a challenge to track for our district, but I think,
Right, and that's why I said for
Yeah.
the numbers I used was just
Yeah.
Alma, Marilla, Wales. I didn't
Yeah.
pull in the little bit of
Yeah.
any of the other towns.
I know, and it's a shame because probably there's like 3 houses in one zip code. Right,
I think
and-
Bennington has 14.
Okay. Yeah.
It's either 13 or 14. I
I know, that's
I always
surprising,
get
right?
lost.
I didn't think it was that many. Yeah.
So can I ask a question here? Or can I ask you to clarify something? Because one of the things that obviously, as we've gone through this whole process, is who's in charge of what, whose authority comes above everybody, and then it gets confusing. So, for example, we know we were waiting for the guidance from the CDC. We were waiting for the guidance from the health department. But then we did also have Erie County come out and issue their cautions, their guidance about maintaining all the barriers we can. And so that in itself, I kind of want you to talk about, does that have authority over us? And then that could result in different districts within a county having different protocols. So I think sometimes when we look around at the communities around us, we all have to adhere to what, and then what does that guidance mean, so that we understand differences with other schools, I guess.
Right. So, and differences between counties is even a big one. So really when it all started and we were looking at that order, I typically look at things federal level, state level, county level, town, and you work your way down, where you can't be less restrictive as you work your way down. You can only become more restrictive. And so about a month ago, because the county was giving us directions and everything, they pulled away from it with a couple memos saying, no, you take your guidance from New York State Education Department, New York State Department of Health. With them having documented that, and they can only advise or try to clarify, it's now all really shift on to the Department of New York State Department of Health. That doesn't mean that you might not see a county health department making a statement, and in that county everyone changing because of it, because they like what they're saying better. But that is really what's been clarified in memos for Erie County, from the Erie County Department of Health, that you get your guidance from the State Education Department and the New York State Department of Health.
But to clarify a little bit of that, Erie County Health Department is responsible for enforcement of those.
They would enforce, they would come to us and monitor, like we're going to send our plan to them, so they would come and monitor what is in here. They're the arm that checks to make sure we're following the state, which is why I like to clarify with them how they're interpreting it to make sure we're on the same page.
And they also do the quarantining.
Yes, they advise us in all the quarantine. They tell the citizens how to quarantine, and they advise us how we should tell the people they're quarantining, because they actually in the beginning said that they would inform and contact all the people for quarantining. It became a large task, and so the schools were really helping everyone to understand what they needed to do for quarantine and isolation. Which worked very well because we had the students, it was immediate phone calls, and I send the Excel spreadsheet on to them for what we have. They look at it, and parents will tell me they get back 3 or 4 days later, but they're already doing what needed to be done, so that's great for the safety of the district.
So from this point, when they're referring to things with schools, those are advisories, not what people have to follow. So I just think for people to hear that it has changed and evolved. And as Michelle said, they are responsible for certain things and can make certain statements, but now with regard to the school, so that is the source for people.
And so actually that's a great statement. You led into something I wanted to get to somehow. When I got the document from the state, I pulled out about 3 different highlighters and went through and say, to the extent possible, may, should, recommend, must, so we'd understand the different levels of what, you know, where it was when I was making decisions and thinking about it. And that's why it took me a couple of days to get through it, is because I was really looking to understand what they meant in each section and then having conversations with other individuals, how they were understanding the document. So like, here's one example. Here it is. I'm running on the second. I'm only on page 2 now. We've gotten far. So therefore, the acceptable mask worn by individuals in all classrooms and non-classroom settings, and say mask should have at least 2 layers of materials. So there's the word should, and it says, however, and then it goes on to say all the masks that people have made at home and are still good, but yet bandanas and neck gaiters are still not acceptable. So therefore, there's been no change to the masks. I just want everyone to hear that. There's no change to the mask. But as you heard with double masking and masks that have 2 layers, they're much more restrictive in how the air would flow out. So that's better for that. And that's one point I wanted to make out. And masks are the primary thing for stopping the spread, I believe, of COVID, and staying as far away from people as you possibly can. But there are limits with that. Transportation.
Also, excuse me. When you have a chance, I have a quick comment to make.
Go ahead.
As a reminder, if you wouldn't mind, to go over again how parents and students could get on the list to get your automated messages that keeps us informed, because I think you're doing an awesome job with that, and I'm surprised that other school districts are not all doing it, because there might be a little bit of the knowledge that you're putting out, and maybe you could inform parents that might be listening now as to how they could get on the list to get your automated calls, because it is very, very informative, and I am just so grateful that you are doing that, so we know what's actually going on and why it's happening.
So what I did real quick so I can show everyone that is I went to the Iroquois website. You can see it right behind me. And I will move down, and Cindy will correct me if I'm wrong. But, whoop. Oh, the connected phone call. I'm sorry. Thank you. Well, this is how I'll take a little side thing. A lot of the messages will be on our Facebook, and you can also get an email notification here. But with the automated phone call, the Connect Ed that I do as a robocall, that you just have to, if you're not on it, call into your building principal, and they will get your number to the technology department, and you will be put on it. And if you can't remember that, email me, and I'll make sure your phone number gets put on that. I would just need to know what building you would like to be included with. Okay? Thank you for getting me to the right
Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I did it, so they could see where they were going. Now I'll go back to this one. Thank you. Made a mistake earlier. Mary Jo corrected. That's what I remembered today. Next thing I want to talk a little about is transportation. So with transportation, the buses will be running how they always have. And I asked Eric Nagel, our supervisor of transportation, how it would look for how many students if we're having the people Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, now all coming on Monday, all coming on Tuesday, all coming on Wednesday. And he said it's really going to vary by bus of how crowded they are. He believes a significant number of them will still be able to do one person per seat, and we would put people from the same family in the same seat. But as you get towards the end of the run, get closer to the school, we will get to a spot on buses where there will be 2 students not from the same household. I did actually have one parent call me in and ask me about this, and she said, that's okay, that's great. My son plays with the son next door a lot after school because we're right next door. Could they share a seat? And I said, well, let the bus driver know, because if we do get to where our seat would have to be shared, that would make sense if they're already playing with each other to be together, because it has to do with exposure. I did go over this. I looked at the documents. I talked about this today, actually, with the Erie County Department of Health, just to make sure I was interpreting it right. They said, yep, that's absolutely fine with that. And also remember, we still have all the parent drop-offs that are coming in, which is also really significantly reducing the number of students on the bus. In fact, we did have one parent on this ask today if they could get their student back on the bus. So be aware of that. Bus drivers can answer those questions, but we are following everything we need to follow with the buses, and then keeping the students as separated as we possibly can on that. Any questions about transportation? And Eric's done a great, Eric said what he's going to do once we see how many are running, he's actually going to look to see if there are any significant ones like that, and he would look to add a bus run for that. So he did say that. And on the main campus, if you remember, the high school students are still hybrid, so there will be reduced number there. So if anything, I think you would be adding one to a primary. At least that's what Eric is telling me now, and he's usually pretty good about that. One thing they had in here, and I'm going to skip through a few pages, I know I have it somewhere, because it's highlighted in blue, is that CDC no longer recommended shields. And so I remember back in the spring when we were looking at this, and we were talking a lot about shields. We were looking at them. We were talking about if I had a shield in front of me and Michelle had one next to her, we could, right now, we wouldn't have the shield between us. So how effective are they? And that's where even today at the meeting with Department of Health, they were saying they're no longer recommending them because the science behind them is not showing that they're really mitigating the transfer. They're really not being beneficial. We had 3 or 4 different avenues we went down with that. What they are saying right now is ventilation and filtration is what you need to focus on, which is great at this time of year because now we can have our windows open more, doors can be open, ventilate out the rooms. And I really believe, and I could be wrong, but I'm like 99% sure that if you remember a few months ago, back in the fall, we put in ionization units, which are air purifiers, in our ventilation system that actively works to break down not only COVID, but stuff for allergies and flu and that. And so our ventilation is probably one of the best in Erie County for doing this. So therefore, that is the direction that they were going. But I know other people might still favor the shields or want them for reasons, so they are still going to be available to anyone that wants to use them at any grade level. We still have those. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I think that was interesting. The way you just said that, I think, was the first time I had maybe heard it that way, that this is a good example of the CDC says that they no longer recommend them. And that can be interpreted different ways. So, okay, so don't go buy them, don't this. But then for people who already have them, when you hear things from the Erie County Health Department saying use every mitigation strategy you have, so you were with the Erie County Health Department, they said that is not a mitigation strategy. Is that what you just...
that's I was shocked because I was hearing some of that layering that you're talking about. And that's where the New York State Department of Health at their presentation, we were asking about using them during lunches and that, and they're like, nope. And I was kind of surprised with how they were saying that. I thought they would be adding more things in because they were talking about layering and having multiple things. And it really seems to be something that started off because I remember going around even in the summer for all the offices, and now it's really seemed to have taken a back seat. We are saving all the shields because new science might come out that changes it. So we're keeping them, we're storing them. So therefore, if something happens and changes, we can go back to it.
But again, other districts may do different things, but you're basing yours on health department and conversations on people whose job it is to tell us what's safe and what's not.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Hygiene, cleaning. We're going to keep following the same procedures, doing the same things with that. Then there are a bunch of pages that nothing changed at all. Now it talks about reducing physical distancing requirement to a minimum of 3 feet between students, which adhere to certain measures. So that's where it got into the measures that we talked about already by being in the different transmission areas, the low, the moderate, substantial risk, high risk. And it has it different for elementary, middle, and high school students because of the age of what they're seeing in transference. Again, they're based on data and science. And this is where, for the elementary, looking at this, it doesn't matter which risk zone you're in, that you can be at 3 feet, but that's where it gets to cohorting then for the middle school and high school, and the fact that we can cohort at the elementary is very beneficial down there. The one difference than the 3 feet everywhere is for the performing arts, so that'd be chorus, woodwind, instruments, brasses, the ones you blow in, not the orchestra. So it would be all the band instruments. And for physical education, they remain at 6. They are at 6 feet. So they were at 12, and they've been brought down to 6 feet. They always have to be at 6 feet. And lunches have to be at 6 feet too, because you're taking your mask off to eat. And adults are supposed to always remain 6 feet apart, so you can see our spacing in here tonight. We're 6 feet apart from each other. Adults always have to be it. And adults, they want teachers to spend as much time 6 feet away from students as possible, but they understand in here that teaching techniques, they would have to get closer to help. I'll use teaching someone to hold a pencil. It's really beneficial to be a little closer. So that is acceptable in here because that's how you have to teach that. So that's page 8. Meals, cafeterias. So this is where the physical distance would be in there. And I had a great question. Someone said, well, cafeterias, my child told me that with 6 feet, the cafeteria is full. And now you're bringing more students back. How are you going to do this? So with the cafeterias, not only will we use cafeterias, we'll use classrooms, overflow rooms, auditoriums, and gymnasiums. And then someone says, well, are they going to be sitting on the floor in the gymnasium? So therefore, that's going to vary on the building. And in some of them, they'll have chairs or different desks in there. And there will be a building that will have mats that they'll have that's put on the floor that can be disinfected. And this will give them a spot to be so they're 6 feet away from each other. What I like about the mats is with the weather it's having, the principals also want to be having the students outside as much as possible. So now when they go outside with the mats, they'll have something to put on the ground. Whereas in other buildings, you might have to take a chair out or something. I think it'd be much easier carrying a mat. So I want to be clear with those aspects. We start with the cafeteria. We use classrooms. Now the classrooms, if we're using that, the students won't be at every desk. They'll be at the desk, their own desk, not somebody else's desk, sitting 6 feet apart from each other. Because that's one thing the New York State Department of Health wanted to be very clear, that students eating in rooms could not be at their desk 3 feet. They had to be 6 feet away, so you had to be cognizant of that. Any questions about meals or cafeteria? Some more stuff that didn't change. Health screening. All the health screenings have to stay in place. So, and that is so important. I can't implore families enough. I think one thing that has really helped at Iroquois is parents at home not sending students in when they have their sniffle or their cough. And it is really, I have seen it. I have had the nurses call me where this child stayed home and then tested positive and there was no transmission in the school. That is so important to do, and even more important now with 3-foot distancing. You need to be doing that screening at home even before they come to school. And at school, we will continue to screen. So we will be checking their temperatures, asking them if they're feeling okay. So that will be happening here. The coordinator who will be making sure all of this is looked at, I'm still keeping it with myself because this way, with so many changes happening so fast, it's one person, and I'm able to make the phone calls and able to take care of that. And it seems to be working well with the communication and consistency, so we'll keep that going. Which is where I'll be looking at the metrics and seeing if there's any change when the principals call me weekends, nights, and everything else when a parent might call them at night saying they just got a test back. And that is the whole plan right there. Covered the virtual town hall. I talked a lot about instruction. I'll take a pause here before I go on to some other things with instruction to see if there's any questions or clarifications.
The plan will be updated and posted on the district website.
It is already there.
Awesome.
Mary Jo got it up there yesterday? Yes. Great question. I didn't even think of saying that. Anything else? Okay, so just moving along a little bit. Talked about this during my virtual town hall because the question came up. What about 3 through 8 exams and regents? Mary Jo will help me here if I stumble. And the 3 through 8 assessments will be the part 1 only.
Part 1 only.
So go ahead.
Gotta make sure I'm turned on. 3 through 8 assessments in ELA, math, and 4th and 8th grade science are part 1 only. They are only the first day, and they will be taken computer-based, and all of the questions will be released because there are no field test questions.
That makes some of us very. Regents exams, and when you talk about regents, could you also include any impact to graduation that it might cause?
So Regents exams, the exams that are still going to occur are in science or science and living environment or living environment, Algebra 1 and ELA. And that is because they're required by federal mandate, part of ESSA, and they are the measure of the exit exam at the secondary level. Students will not be, what's the word? It won't count against students. Should they not do well on the exam, they will still get credit for taking the class, and as long as their averages of the other quarters remains above 65, they will get credit for the course.
Thank you. Any questions with that?
Yes, I have a question. Are the Regents exams given during the school day or on the weekends?
All of the exams, 3 through 8, are done in school, and they're done during the week. And in fact, Dr. Ramirez will be sending out a letter shortly for all of the students for the Regents exams. And the one item is that the student needs to be present in school to take the exam. They cannot take it from home.
So that means there'll be alternating days for the Regents, or all the kids will have to be in school?
On those days, students who take the exam will be in school. In a Regents exam situation, it is only given on a specific date and time.
So there's 4 Regents exams, and there's 4 days that are designated. So Earth Science will be 1 day. The students taking Earth Science will come in. There will not be other students in the building, so they'll have plenty of rooms to spread out for social distancing.
Right, it's only the students who are taking that class this year.
Correct.
Correct.
It's not
I'm sorry
the
if I
whole
wasn't
high school, yeah.
Yeah. Which all the other students will be very thankful to the people taking Earth Science
Taking
for the
the
day.
exam.
Well, I mean, Regents Weeks were awesome, right?
Yeah.
I mean, actually, all the other kids who are not in,
When you became a
taking-
senior, it became so much better.
yeah, no Regents exams. But people, even though the grades don't count against anybody, you have to take the Regents exam, right, to get credit for the class.
It's encouraged to take the exam, yes,
But you don't need to take the Regents to get credit for the exam
this year.
But
this year.
you will
You
get
don't?
Regents
Sure.
credit for the class without taking the exam?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
And the reason being is those students who are 100% virtual cannot be.
Positive. Yes, positive, because the New York State Chancellor, Young, and Commissioner Betty Rosa, this was something I had. I forgot I had it because I just got it today. And the U.S. Department of Education chose not to approve the New York State waiver request to forego state assessments this year in face of a worldwide pandemic. So the state education departments believe canceling state assessments should be the most appropriate, fair thing to do. And in the best interest of our students, we are deeply disappointed in the state education department. While we are grateful for the U.S. Secretary of Education's statement that students learning remotely should not be brought into school solely to take an assessment, so accordingly, in New York State, no student should be brought into school just to take a state assessment. further, the department will administer only session 1 through 8 of the assessments, mathematics, ELA, the written test components. 4 through 8 additionally Regents exams required will be given, which are the ELA, Algebra 1, Earth Science, Living Environment, and the New York NICE slots, and the assessments being administered according to establish those students who are safely able to complete those. The U.S. Education Department previously uncoupled the state assessments with ESSA, including the 65% rate for assessments. So any results this year will be used solely to measure student learning. And in here, the results, and it says in the results demonstrated are already using to assess students, but I don't think I highlight it because I didn't really want to advertise it, but they will not be used, they will not be penalized, and it will not impact them for any graduation requirements or course requirements.
So to clarify, we believe so much in our teachers and our students that we believe that they'll be well prepared. And so we strongly encourage them to still take the exam because it will prepare them for next year's regents that more than likely will not be so have that same waiver.
And I'm sure with data-driven instruction, yes.
Yeah, it helps.
It'll help, right? I mean, that will give you an idea of, I know it's not easy to compare cohorts of test results because it's not really fair, but we do have a general idea of where our students kind of fall.
And I think it'll actually help what you were asking, and maybe someone else, I can't remember, about how are we going to respond to the educational deficit left by COVID using the funding. Is this what you were going to say?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Doug,
take it, Mary Jo.
Doug took my words because what it will allow us to do is to identify what we were able to cover, because the students came in at a deficit and we had to make up ground and measure how far we got. So it will be a measure of how far we've gotten and what we might need to do to modify our curriculum for the next cohorts.
So that's it for assessments. Sports, 2 emails. It's been a busy week. Came across my desk this week. I feel like everything I'm saying came across in the last couple of days. It says for the Commissioner of Education for ensuring high school students who graduate prior to the end of spring, so sometimes you have January graduates, have access to interscholastic spring season, that they will be eligible to compete with the spring season. I do not believe we had any students graduate in January in our district, but if they did, they would be able to participate. And then also the New York State Department of Health. This came from Section 6 at Executive Director. And New York State Department of Health says we are allowed to have up to 2 spectators per athlete for outdoor sports. And the indoor sports will remain at 2 spectators for the home team only. So outdoor, away, and home can have 2 spectators per participant, per athlete, but indoor sports can only have 2 for the home team. Questions?
I hate to be that person, but I'm going to. You're talking about sports again and the idea that you can be outside, and it just popped into my head. We have had outdoor concerts in the past. Is there anything being planned so that our music students still have some way that they can be participating in their activities as well?
Yes, our orchestra director is looking, she contacted me and was looking to put something together for that. So maybe even some of the pops and things, that's what I'm hoping will start to happen with that music. And I would fully support any concert outside on the tennis courts where we have enough space, where they typically hold in that little alcove. I would rather maybe be spread out where there's a greater area where they can spread out. But I have had conversations and have given the green light to go ahead and plan for anything they can or would like to with that. I know the performing arts were very excited when it went to 6 feet. because they said they could do a lot more work with that for the students. Anything else? So the last thing I have I think conversations we had today with Dr. Ramirez with seniors. I mean, has it ever changed the landscape of COVID? But we were looking at graduation was one thing, and some new guidance came out this week. And it says, in my first initial glance at it and reading through it, that if you have a student that's graduating, you wish to come to graduation, you will have to be able to produce a negative COVID test. I still have to read through the guidance a little more to see if a vaccination will also work. I believe Dr. Ramirez told me it does, but don't quote me on that yet. And not only will we have to see that as verification, but Dr. Ramirez informed me that there will be we have to hold these on record for 28 days in case we get audited. I'm still working through that document. That's why I have very limited knowledge, and I'll update the board in the Friday memo if I get through more of it to give you more factual information, and Dr. Ramirez would be relaying this on to the seniors and the parents. I haven't read and digested it enough, but what I read for showing that, and I try not to smile when I say this because I can't believe it, that you would actually have to show a negative test for outdoor and indoor from what I read in my briefing through it.
Question, if you have to show it, is it something, and you said we
have to have
keep
record
a record
of it, so we'd have to have some way to copy it, or you would have to get it ahead of time. So that's why we're looking at this now and trying to understand the document better and get clarifications on that. ITAC was at the meeting, and so with ITAC, they sponsored a slow roll last year, and they're looking to do that again this year, so they'll have more details coming out with that. And they're trying to do something much like Mr. Curran talked about from reporting from the high school, something for the students along with that, something at the end possibly. So they have some good ideas they're really working around. But go ahead.
I'm just going to say the slow roll was fantastic last year. ITAC did a great job. All of the faculty and staff and the support that the kids got was amazing. Also, just a plug for, it was awesome to have graduation here. It really was. Yeah. It was so nice. Just
and that's where Dr. Ramirez and I are talking about that, because I know it's very weather dependent, but what could we do? And I also think, they talked about ventilation, one of the key factors. So I will express that to him tomorrow. The prom, yes.
Just, also with everything else that's going on with Dr. Ramirez and graduation and all of that, I know that there's so many senior parents that are itching to be helping and plan events, and he's offered to meet with people, get people going, get organized. And I kept thinking, in the middle of everything that's going on, it's where students are first, and yep. it's so appreciated. So,
yep. And I met with Dean and Julie Muskoff, head of SGB, the advisor. We're talking about different prom ideas, possibilities for that. Again, it's safety, distancing, reaching out to different venues of what would be requirement there, how would we do it, how many people, because with COVID ever changing, so they're working on that. And then Dr. Ramirez was also working on something for awards, trying to have it virtually, thinking of when they could have it, to do something with the seniors for that, of how they could do that. So they're working on that too. So I don't want to steal any of his thunder, partially because he's still developing his cloud to have the thunder. And so we're working on all of those. And that's all I have for my report, unless there's any questions.
No, I just in response to everything, I know everybody keeps saying it, but I'm sitting here now and I keep going back to last March when we said everybody had this quick week to turn around and reinvent, like it was like building the plane while you're in the air. And I keep thinking every time the guidance changes, everybody's rebuilding the plane again, still on the same trip. So I know everybody's tired, but I'm grateful for everybody, from the kids, the parents, the teachers, the administrators, everybody, for reinventing what education looks like multiple times through the year with the student's best interest at heart. So it is, if there's a silver lining, it's seeing how much everybody is doing and wants to do to help the kids, and it's exciting. And that brings us to recognition of guests regarding agenda items only. Do we have any?
No, we do not.
We do not. Okay. And so then our discussion of agenda items 10.2 through 10.5.8.
I've got one thing. I noticed that we do have quite a number of retirements on our agenda tonight, and first and foremost, I'd like to congratulate all those individuals, as well as thank them for all the years of service to the Iroquois community, and especially our students, and I wish them well in their retirement.
Well said, and you know, having talked to many of them, I think it's real bittersweet. They love being here, and we've loved having them. And I wish them all the best and the most fun and exciting retirement they can have.
They'll be missed.
I also found it exciting to see a field trip approval on there for 2022. So that was an exciting thing that we haven't seen in a while. Any other discussion? Okay, then moving on to the consensus agenda. 10.1A, is there a request to withdraw any specific items from the agenda?
Yes, I would like a motion to withdraw items 10.4.4.1, 10.4.9.1, and 10.4.9.2 from the consensus agenda and vote on them as separate item.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Noes? Okay. B, is there a request to add specific items to the agenda? And a request, a motion to approve consensus agenda items 10.2 through 10.5.8.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? And that brings us to many pages on.
Sharon, I think you have to do the separate
Yeah,
items
you have
that
to
we removed.
vote the ones.
Yeah, I got. Just 8 pages in. Motion to approve items 10.4.4.1, 10.4.9.1, and 10.4.9.2.
So moved. Second.
Second, Louise.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Noes? Okay,
I abstain.
and abstain. And do we have any recognition of guests on any topic?
No, we do not.
Okay. Then I need a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiated agreements.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Noes? All right, then we'll move into executive session, and we will be returning solely for the purpose of adjourning the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
We got to-
Oh, no. Okay, we now.
Yeah, we need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Noes? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.